Good day, everybody. Welcome to our May DALiM usually tips and tricks webinar that we've turned into a little bit of a Duo recap. We just had Duo a month ago and just wanted to highlight some of the new features that they're going to be coming out with ES5 in the future. So just to remind everybody, and for those of you who are new to our webinars, in GoToWebinar at the top left you should have a zoom button. So if you want to zoom, if you can't see the presentation properly, or if you need it to fit to your screen, you can use that to do that. Questions, everybody's muted during the webinar, so if you have questions that you want answered, if they're critical to what I'm actually showing, and I notice them in the box, I'll cover them as I go. If not, I'll save them to the end and just kind of go over the questions at the end. But if you could just enter those in the GoToWebinar control panel under the questions section. Just ask your questions there. We'll try to cover it. I'll have Alex online with me, and Mike Moscato should be joining soon as well. So they'll kind of be on the lookout if they see those. If not, we'll cover them at the end. So again, we're going to kind of talk today some of the new features, mostly pertaining to ES5 that we're seeing coming out soon that they covered during Duo. Well, broach on a couple of things that are twist related, but it really wasn't a twist heavy Duo because so much has been put into ES5, and twist is just kind of getting some updates that actually go along with some of the stuff, and we'll cover that. Wanted to mention a couple of presentations that we had. I'm not going to obviously go over this because I can't cover 2 days of presentations in 45 minutes, but I did want to mention some of the presentations that were done. Silicon Publishing, Max Dunn did a presentation on what they offer other than the plugins we're going to talk about later for ES5 with Silicon Paginator, Designer, and Connector. Some great tools people look at. He did a nice presentation on that. We had Pete Gunther from the Splashlight team doing a presentation on how they're making use of ES5 and how it's really added a lot to their photo lab. We've had Mike Moscato and Ryan Fromm from IOI and Blanchard Systems, respectively, doing their tips and tricks, showing some nice things that can be done with ES5 and Twist as well. We had Rick Darnell from CK doing an interesting presentation on how the DALiM product has been integrated into CK and how he was responsible for a lot of that and took on more responsibilities through it. Really good presentation he did. Then we had Dr. Mark Boschkus with Archivare talking about archiving and how that's going to integrate with ES in the future. So to get on with the new features, since we're limited on time here, some of the stuff I'm going to be showing, I'll actually show you my alpha version of ES5. Some of the features, but some of the stuff I don't have yet in the future, the product that we have that won't be coming out till the beta. So one of those is the look and feel. When ES5 does come out, it's going to have a kind of a flat look that you see in a lot of products like the Microsoft Office 365 products. And that we talked a little bit about this after the Worldwide Technology Meeting presentation where they had integrated it and put that into the dialogue engine itself on the HTML5 view of it. They've now actually gone and taken the whole product, all of ES5, and incorporated that look and feel to the whole product to make it consistent. So it's a nice new kind of fresh look for it. One of the things they've really concentrated on, since they're really targeting asset management inside of ES5, is enhancements to metadata handling itself. One of those is options, again, this is not available yet in my version, but is the ability to take a metadata set or metadata itself and make it searchable or to save it in the XMP data. So you can have a metadata set, and if it tends to be large and you really don't need it for searching reasons, you are able to omit it from ES itself. So you won't clog up your database with a bunch of metadata that you're not interested in. So it's a nice way just to kind of keep the metadata set size down a little bit, and they've also done some more that we're going to cover with that as well. One of those is MetaData Storage. So ES5 will now have basically a sidecar for XMP data that's going to live similar to the way that JPEG previews and thumbnails do now. It'll be on the ES file system itself. It'll be an XMP file that's associated to the asset itself. So they'll still have the ability, for compatibility purposes, to handle the metadata that's in the database today. But going forward in the future, once you upgrade to ES5, you'll be able to incorporate that into a file system XMP data, so it's not written into the database, and we get out of these really large databases that we're growing that sometimes do cause issues. Another nice feature that's coming out is metadata synchronization. So for those of you who have workflows that have metadata insertion points and metadata is being updated as it goes through the workflow in ES, you've always had to have the insert metadata tool inside of the workflow itself. And that tool in some workflows I've built has caused me some issues here and there just in the logic of the workflow. What you'll now have the ability to do is, if you notice the circle area on the bottom, update the metadata in the document. So if that's checked for a volume in ES, it will automatically update the metadata when it's updated on the file system. So let me go ahead and show that real quick. So I have my files here, and just to show, basically updates the caption writer for one of my assets. So if you notice right now, there's no caption writer for the asset. If I come in and edit the metadata, make sure I do the right one, add my name to that. As soon as I do that, I should be able to come in here, update it, and now the metadata is updated automatically. So there's no tool in the workflow doing it. It's just doing it automatically. So this is really nice because, especially from a asset management standpoint, if you're updating metadata and the file system's not being updated, it gives you sometimes problems if you're trying to grab the files straight from the file system. Although ES 4.5 did have the ability, when you downloaded it from ES, it would insert the metadata to get around it. But if you wanted direct file system access, that information wouldn't be there. Or if you wanted to use some of the information sometimes outside of ES, it would be problematic. So it's a nice addition that you can do that now. And again, saving it on the XMP. Something they've added now, we've always had the ability to do the taxonomies, facet, or we shouldn't say always, since ES4, we've had the ability to do taxonomy searches, facet searches, filtered searches. They've now added the folder option to that as well. So what that means is that if you go into the search area of ES, you now have a folders tab here. So if I do a search for everything on my system, so it's all the files on my demo server, I can go to folders, so go to file system, assets, and I can limit that to specific areas. So if I only wanted it to qualify for that folder, I'm only searching the contents of that folder. So that way, if you have large groups of file systems, especially assets, or you wanted to search just a file system, not search your projects themselves, or vice versa, you're able to do that now and limit where the search is actually looking, so you don't get duplicated results because the image was used in a project and you're finding it multiple times. Something in hand with that also is the ability now to limit who can see taxonomies, and we're going to add more filters as well. But if you notice under my taxonomies, I have site and theme right now. So it's like two different taxonomies I use, and maybe I'm using them for different customers. You're able to go in, and if I remember where I set that up, and actually it's the profile. If I go under the profile for somebody, say customer admin, now under settings, for my search settings, I'm able to manage taxonomies, and I can actually set one off, one on, so I can control who uses or who sees which taxonomies. And again, they're going to be adding more and more filtering like this, so you can build out an ES for multiple customers and them not all see each other's taxonomies or facets or whatever that is. So if I go in and log in as a different profile here, when I go to my search, you see now just have the site taxonomy and not the other taxonomies. And I think I had some images. Search results. So just a nice way to clean up, and DALiM is often looked at being able to take an ES and host it for several customers. And we do that, and basically we do it, and we have to limit what a customer admin can actually see, because we don't want them seeing all of our workflows and things like that. So there's going to be more filtering like that that's added to actually be able to isolate what customers can see and do, but still give them the ability to create a workflow or use taxonomies without filtering it from completely. We're going to have relationships. So we talked about this after the Worldwide Technology meeting, where we're going to be able to take and relate documents to each other and use those relationships for specific purposes inside of ES. So if I go to my project here, and let me hide this so I can actually see what I'm doing. You're able to do it a couple of different ways, and actually I think I'm in the wrong project. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just trying to remember. What I did, just to show what I'm doing, is I downloaded a few images out of ES, and basically what it's using is the DDUID of the images themselves. I'm placing those inside of InDesign. Then I took and saved my InDesign document out of ES and exported the PDF out of ES. And so once I actually find where I did that to, I think it was here. Yeah. So I took this InDesign file here, saved it out of InDesign into ES, and in the link area, you'll see that basically it's got those images associated with it inside of ES itself. So ES knows the relationship there, and it knows that this PDF also was created from it. So if I choose this PDF was derived from the InDesign file. So it automatically takes those relationships and applies them, or you can actually do it manually inside of ES itself. So they show that here, where you can basically take a document, link it in, and create manual relationships. The automatic relationships are usually the ones that more people are interested in, and again, it uses the document UUID or the instance UUID of files, so you can actually track it and know that files are updated. And wherever I had my images, so I have an image like this, a TIFF file, and earlier I had a relationship, but I think I broke it when I was playing with it. But that TIFF file was derived from another file, so it would show that relationship there. And this is an alpha version, so I've noticed a few things kind of change on me on the fly, which is kind of interesting. Those relationships are also kept through Twist. So any transformation tool in Twist, it's not going to ruin those relationships. You'll still see it inside of there, and you would see the derived from relationship of a TIFF, but if you use the rasterize tool to make a PDF into a TIFF file. Categories are coming. We talked about this during the Worldwide Technology meeting as well. And what we're basically able to do with those is kind of what we talked about before, is filter information where people can't see all of your workflows, for instance. Right now, from what I've seen in this beta version, the workflows are the only categories that are working. They will be working, I think, once it's beta, on several things that I'll cover in a little bit. But basically, I can have a workflow area. You see I've created this BSI folder and a webinar folder, and I have specific workflows inside of those. Webinar BSI workflow, webinar workflow, And that information can be used to limit who sees what or which workflows they have. So if I come in and log in as my user here, and if I go to one of my projects now, I only have the common workflows and the webinar BSI workflow. I don't have the other workflow or the other two workflows in this list. So I can limit the list of workflows that people have to choose from here and what they actually would be able to edit when they come in to workflows here. So you only see the BSI workflows and the common workflows. They don't see the webinar workflows. So you wouldn't have those to screw up or mess with or take a look at what someone else is doing. You're able to restrict that. And of course, like I mentioned, those are going to be available for workflows, metadata sets, color spaces, viewing conditions, milestones, and process parameters. I don't see those working right now because basically all I have to do is go into workflows here, and when you go to new, you can create a new workflow directly or a new category, and the category is how I created the BSI and the webinar folders, where I don't see that on milestones yet, for instance. It's just new. So we should have that coming in the beta, and I look forward to seeing that. Something nice, again, that kind of targeting that asset management world is are going to be triggers and actions. So basically, triggers and actions are a way to set some event happening in ES that causes something else to happen automatically. And I don't think I have another slide on that. So I'll talk about what I did. So I came up with just kind of a use case for it. I actually have a customer currently that has a workflow where they do image ingestion and then they have to rate those images. And based on the rating, those images move to different parts of the workflow. They move forward once they're rated, and the action is simply rating those images. So right now what their process is basically is they have to go in and say if they go and rate these images, they're coming in here and I'm just hitting my number pad and I'm giving the images ratings here. They go through and they rate them, and then they have to select all their files and approve those to move them forward. And I've got to make sure I log in as the right user here. So it's a little bit cumbersome of a process because they do have to go through, they do their normal rating, and these are typically just art directors or something like that that aren't used to having to approve things. They're used to just rating things, and that's what their job encompasses. They don't have to do much else. But in this case, they got to go back and do the approvals manually on the files. And it's a little bit cumbersome because they also, if they don't like an image at all, they don't put a rating on it. So I have some complex workflow logic based on that if it's not rated, it gets parked in a different area of the workflow and all that. It works fine for them, but with triggers and actions, and I'll actually show you it working, and then I'll talk about how I did it really quickly. So we have these files. I have a file here. It's sitting there basically at a milestone. This is the exact same workflow, by the way, as the other one I just showed you. It's sitting at a set rating milestone. That's what it does for them, and basically it's just a step approval for them and moves forward after they approve it. But right now, all I have to do is set an approval for it, and that file will actually, that one won't because it had a space in it. So let me do when it doesn't have a space in it. I noticed that as a bug, something I got to fix in my script. If it has a space, it doesn't work. But I set a rating for this file, and it's going to go ahead and move forward in the workflow and basically just update the workflow. And I broke it somehow. I always love when things work before the webinar, but not right when you do it. Actually, it did work. It just didn't refresh the interface. You'll see this actually went through and went ahead and updated the workflow, and you see it's now a job completed. That one was too. It just wasn't refreshing the interface. So all they have to do is go in, rate these files. They'll automatically move through and jump through the next workflow. And the only difference in the setup here is basically I now have the ability for, wherever I want. I'm just doing it on the file system. This was the other workflow, the old method. It's just basically using a normal document workflow called image rating. You know, nothing special there. In this one, in fact, you won't really see anything special. It's just using basic properties, but it's using this trigger test template set. So if I come in here and take a look at that one, oops, over here. There's one thing that's added now, and actually is the ability to add a trigger set to your project template. And in this case is one I called webinar. And what we now have under workflows is this trigger set area where I can take and create a trigger set. I just called it rated. Basically, it's looking for a piece of metadata to get updated. So the scope is document application rating. That rating to be set. I just set the value not to be empty. So if this isn't empty, then it's going to trigger this action, which is firing off basically just a user action that I have that calls the API that does the approval. So just gives us another piece to build in to build logic into our workflows and gives ability. So, you know, what we can do here is basically the scope can be on the document. I can do ES scripts. I can just update metadata possibly. I can set a delay so it doesn't happen until after a certain amount of time or at a specific time. And if it's metadata, I'm just setting what the metadata is that's being updated. And for here, I can also set what that condition is. I can actually set a JavaScript or expression on that. I can set it to automatically trigger something as if the document's placed in the flat plan or if it's dragged back to the clipboard. So using all this logic and all the tools we have in ES, we can actually build even more powerful workflows and more automated workflows. And we will take the time to do specific webinars on some of these features. Triggers and actions will be one where we show you how to build these, and we'll have some other ones as well. Global annotations is basically a way from the project view level to annotate, to put annotation information on a project or on a file itself. So if I come back into my project here, for instance, we now have under here another tab over here for annotation. So I can select a file and put an annotation. Oops. And unfortunately launched soft proofing. So there we go. But I can add annotations, and basically those annotations can actually have replies and to-dos on them as well, just like you would inside a dialog engine itself. But I can have them on a document level here or on the project level as well. So I can have those on here, reply to it here, and add those to it. So it's a project-based one, and this one is file-based itself. What I haven't seen is, I would hope this is coming, that there needs to be an indication that there is an annotation actually on this file, because otherwise if I'm on other files, I don't know that exists. But it should show us the annotation mark just like it does with dialog as well. Just a new way to communicate with people or give them information about what is going on inside of a project. One of the big things that they're adding to ES5 is a concept called desktops. We touched on this a little bit after the Worldwide Technology meeting, but basically a desktops gives us a new way to build a completely different GUI for ES for our users to use. And I just did a couple of quick examples. I'm not really an expert at this yet, and I'm definitely not a designer, but I'm using a basic login page, but I could have skinned this login page as well completely differently using CSS, because basically desktops uses CSS and components inside of ES itself to build the look and feel. So if I come in as my DTP profile, because basically the profile controls this information, I'm going to come in and I have kind of this look and feel. And I'm going to hide this over here real quick. I have a clipboard feature here. I have my logo over here that's linked to my website, or to DALiM's website in this case. I have a documentation component, so I can click on this and quickly, if I wanted to build my own custom documentation for a user, so if you're extending this out to your customers and you want to build a simple, here's how you use this interface, you could build that in here, link to it. I'll give them a quick way to look at the documentation. Sign out, I have a search up here. On this right tab, you kind of see this area scrolling through. This is basically just a little widget that shows me the last 20 files that have been uploaded into ES. It's constantly updating if files are coming in. And then as you see, I've kind of skinned this, created little icons that I've used for this look, and I can get to my different areas inside of ES. So if I want to go to the file system, for instance, come in here and I'm looking at my file system view. It's more static, less control that you have inside of ES. Like I can't change the size of them without just, other than using browser functions like plus and minus. But I am able to come in here, look at my images, launch soft proofing if I want to. If my laptop catches up. I have a lot running on the laptop right now, but I can launch soft proofing, do my soft proofing that I would do inside of Dialog Engine, and do my basic selects, any kind of rating I want to do on the files, and my approvals and rejections as well. I can do up here whatever actions I actually give people, the actions show here as I want to. So if I want to do a contact sheet, I can do the contact sheet really quickly in here with the whole job ticket, everything that we're used to seeing. All that works through here, automatically download it, however I want to do it. So all that can be done inside of a very simplified interface. I even have the ability, there's my contact sheet, for the filters, everything I want to see in here. Cookie crumb to go back to where I was if I wanted to go into my projects themselves. There's my project, files there. So it's just one interface that's kind of a more, gets me everywhere inside of ES. But if I wanted to even simplify that further, if I want a customer just to have an interface where he comes in and maybe just does approvals of his files that need to be approved, that's all I want him doing. I don't want him having to browse anything, I don't want him to look at anything. This is a view pops in, this is his to-do list of files to approve. So he just has to go in here and do his approvals or whatever he would do inside here, do his approvals. Actually, not going to approve all of them. Approve some of them since they'll go away. Again, he could have launched dialogue or whatever you give him rights to do, but he can do that inside of here and move forward. You have your milestone view if you wanted that to know where it's at in the workflow. But just that simple, anything like that you can do inside of here and give them a nice, simple interface to do that. And the way it's controlled, really quickly, doing okay on time, so is a few different things. And like I said, this is one of the ones we'll definitely do a webinar on and cover more. But basically, all the desktop is a different kind of job ticket layout. So we have is, actually, I think that's not the one I want to show. Yeah, we'll show this one. So this was my sample one here. And basically, I just created a job ticket that's a desktop metadata template. So it's a new one that's in here now that's called desktop. It allows me to apply a CSS theme in it. So as far as some of the basic coloring and stuff, I don't have to control that through the CSS file. I can apply my specific theme to it and change that from that itself. Then I have these components, just like if I would be building a job ticket inside of a project, anything like that. I have my user logo, my basket, my link to my documentation, the logout button, and my search component all up here, my breadcrumb, my menu component, my smart view, and then all of these are configurable. So we won't go into detail on them, but basically I can gauge the size and set the size I wanted to start at. What smart view am I using for this? What the view mode is, things like that. I can set all those type of functions in here and basically control exactly where these elements go and how they perform or how they act. So I could, this is just a sample, and I kind of followed DALiM's sample to make it simple for me, since I'm not a graphic artist and not great at design. But so I kind of stuck with something I knew. But I could change these components and change the whole look and feel of what I wanted in here. And you basically set the size of the elements, how big they are, and you start kind of doing it. Right now, the preview does not work for this. It's something they're hoping they work on in the future. They plan on redoing this whole interface for job tickets, and that won't come till 5.5 or 6. So it's going to be a while, but they did talk about that a little bit. It just gives us some nice way to kind of create a custom interface and really simplify a user's experience inside of ES. So instead of logging into a full ES and then maybe limiting to just that smart view that's giving them some functions, but you're still inside of ES, you can really change this. And there's basically a CSS file I use to do things like the custom icons that I showed, things like that. So I can point them to the icons that I want them to see and change the whole look and feel just from the CSS file. Pretty decently documented. It's easy to follow the document and what all the features are and update those features. 3D proofing. We talked about this a little bit. I don't remember if I'd shown it, so I figured I'd show it just real quick. I can never find any great collada models to demo, but I do have one that actually works, and it's just a simple laptop. Get in here. These other ones, unfortunately, the Stormtrooper and Batman I tried in here, they don't open, and it could just be limitations of my laptop, because if you could hear it in the room right now with the fan running, since I'm running so much different software right now, it's amazing. But basically, it'll open up the 3D model, it'll let you turn it, rotate it, it'll let you annotate on the model. So that's in the 3D space, it's actually creating the annotations. You know, it's on the keyboard on that. It's adding the notes. So all those type functions are in there, and you're able to rotate them, and they actually rotate in space on that. You're able to do approvals, rejections. So what DALiM is doing with this, and I don't have the full demo on my laptop, but what they're doing is actually integrating 3D proofing and this all the way out to an export to Augment. Augment's an app that shows basically 3D models in a real-world space, and you can actually get your models through ES, so get them approved, get them converted to the right format in ES, and then output them through there. That's not fully working yet in this version, but we should have that and be able to demo that all the way through for those interested. Something this version doesn't have either, and you notice it because it's in the kind of flat interface, is you're now going to have the ability to print your flat plan similar to you could in Mistral. So you'll be able to take a flat plan and instead of doing a screenshot of it, actually be able to go to print and print it out so you can see the point in time screenshot. Something we should be getting in the next couple of weeks, finally, will be the Silicon Publishing or Silicon Connector Creative Cloud plugin. So you'd see before Silicon Connector and the new plugin, basically you had to move InDesign files around along with all their linked assets back and forth. So if you did upload those assets and the InDesign file to ES, then someone would have to download all the pieces so that they could work on the file, update it, and then re-upload it back to ES so it moves down the chain. Once we get the Silicon Connector plugin for CC, you'll be able to actually place the elements directly from ES onto your page in InDesign and only save that InDesign file to ES. Someone could then download the InDesign file, open it, the links to the dot files, the high-res files will all be to the cloud or to wherever the ES system resides based on a URL. So they won't have to download all those assets or manage those assets on their end. They'll just have to have the InDesign document, update it, resave it back to ES, and continue on in the process. So it'll save moving files around quite a bit. It's going to really be a nice workflow. Silicon Connector does currently work with other asset management systems, so it's something that is tried and true, is actually working in production. So it's not going to be something that is a new technology that we have to troubleshoot. It's basically just based on the CMIS API. So that's going to be a very nice asset for those of you that work in design and have to work with images. Something that and I'm trying to think how I'm going to do something here, but something that's nice that they're adding inside of ES is document indexing and logging. So one of the things they're doing is basically replacing the current Lucene indexing that they do with ElasticSearch. So ElasticSearch is just much more robust, and it's going to give a lot more features inside of it. One of those is going to be basically the integration with Kibana to do custom reports. And I have a video on the show because unfortunately I couldn't get this working on my ES5, but Mike did get it working on his. I think I may just be one build a little bit behind from what Alex was telling me, because I think Alex has it working now as well. Once he upgraded, I didn't want to do the upgrade in the middle of preparing for my webinar. So I'm going to show you a video. You won't be able to hear what Mike's saying during the video, so I'll try to tell you what he's actually showing since I'm on the phone. But basically, so inside of ES, what you'll see is basically now a statistics area, and you'll be able to see that, and you can have like a graph showing the types of files or the format of the files that are in over on the left-hand side, how many of those have come in. Basically, you just have statistics on that kind of information. You have project information on the right-hand side for different projects, and you have filtering at the top. So, which day you can filter by which day, the amount of time, how often it's refreshing. So it's kind of statistics that are always refreshing. You just change it to this year. So he's changing. Obviously, it's a demo service, so he probably doesn't have a lot of information on it, but he's got a few projects there he's looking at. Again, back to today, 6 files in 2 different projects. Well, 6 files in one project, 5 files in another. Can also change, basically filter the information. So which project, he's only looking specifically at what's in job 4, 5, 6 there. 5 files, and half of them have been Tiffet, and half of them have been probably Adobe PDF there, and he's just can turn off and on filters as he's going through it. And basically you set up all these statistics inside of a configuration page inside of Kibana itself. So you see here where he's kind of building what the graph is going to look like, the information that's contained in the graph. I think from what we saw some samples of, you can do things like even like file size by customer, so amount of disk space that somebody's taking up, all those types of statistics. A lot of stuff that our customers have asked for in the past that we could never really give them without doing scripts, we'll be able to do inside of here now. So we're really looking forward. I'm looking forward to trying to get it to work on my ES so I can play with it a little bit more and have some more experience with it like Mike had here, and he got to play with it. And I think Mike just went through basically, we had a little bit of training before Duo where we set up some basic statistic pages and went through it. So really looking forward to that. Another one that I'm going to do as a separate webinar is going to be the archiving. I talked about this a little bit and how it's going to work after Worldwide Technology Meeting. It's basically using Archiware's P5, and basically it's just a really good integration of P5 inside of ES where it'll archive the file, it marks the file as being archived, and in a way, as far as ES is concerned, to me, the look and feel of it's a little bit like an HSM product where it feels like there's a stub file there. The file, as far as ES concerned, it still exists. There's still a thumbnail for it. There's still a preview for it. Just the high res is archived away. So from a database standpoint, the XMP data is still there on the file system now in ES5. Everything still exists, but if I want to do something with that file, like reuse it, then I can actually restore it from the backup. It'll restore it automatically from P5, put it back in place, show that it's restored, and then I can download it or do whatever I wanted to do, copy it to a new project or anything like that. So that's going to be a really nice feature that several of my customers have been waiting for quite some time. Again, I think a question that I've seen a couple of people ask already is basically, when's it going to be ready? Beta is scheduled to be ready for Drupa, which is May 31st to June 10th. DALiM will be there in a booth, and you should have already received information on that. So the ES5 beta will be available by then, and then as we've seen, especially with a major release like this, the beta period probably will be extended at least 3-4 months. So we're probably not looking at having an official version of ES5 till end of the year, probably close to, they may wind up targeting the Worldwide Technology Meeting for the actual release itself, which would be beginning of December. Not exactly sure on that timeline. It all depends on obviously the bugs that are found in the beta process as we go through. So, reminder, these webinars are scheduled for the third Wednesday of each month, except for like this past month, April, because of Duo being right on top of it. You can always check out the BlanchardSystems.com events page to see when they are scheduled, and as soon as we know the topics that are going to be covered, we'll put that information on the website as well. And typically, as soon as we figure out what we're doing, we'll go ahead and send that information out to everyone in a mailer. If you have ideas for future webinars, please contact techs@blanchard.com. We'll be happy to cover those with you. We'd like to set up and make sure you see the information you want to see covered in the webinar. If not, we do plan, probably covering some of the stuff I talked about today in more detail, especially like desktops, archiving, triggers and actions. Those would be specific webinars that we cover, especially if we get information, unless we get information back from everybody saying, no, don't wait till it's official, then we might do that and wait. But let me see what questions we got here. All right, somebody asked, what is an ES script? I'm not sure where they're referring to exactly. I did mention scripting in a couple of different places. One is a script step that I mentioned. Basically, in my workflow, and let me remember where I was at. So the workflow I set up for that user action that I showed is, let's see, which workflow was that? Is basically a workflow that looks like this. This approve thing is a script that was set. So script is basically like a bash script that had Brendan create for me, and goes on a certain folder of your application server, of your app server in ES, and gets read in here. And basically at that point, that file will get sent to that script and run. So in this case, basically all this workflow does is takes the file, sends it to a bash script that basically looks at the file name. Based on the file name, it does a curl post to the API that does an approval of that file. So it just gives you a quick way to interact with the file, use the API outside of it through a bash script. But any kind of scripting can be done. The other script that we talked about, and I haven't really played with this much, I'm not sure what can be put in there, is, where was I? The triggers and actions. So in triggers and actions, you can actually do JavaScript here. So you can do JavaScripting in here where the condition can be that, or the resulting action can be Java as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it could be ES script. This may have been what he was referring to here. And the ES script, again, I haven't played with this, but I'm just assuming that it can be any kind of Java or script that ES can read and do in here. So I may have been able to do the approval here instead of the way I did it. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't get that far to play with. I don't know, Alex, if you know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I haven't played with that feature too much, to be honest, but I'm thinking the same thing as you, is that you could use that, for example, to basically trigger anything you might trigger in a normal programmed link in ES. So, for example, maybe you could use that to set some metadata or do some calculations. For example, if you need to evaluate something before you decide whether or not to run a trigger, that's the kind of use case I could see for that sort of thing.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Somebody asked, what is the status of the helper app? The helper app they're talking about, I think at one point it was called, it was codenamed Sunrise. We talked about this, I think after the Worldwide Technology Meeting of the previous year, 2014. They didn't talk about it much, but my understanding is it is still in the works, and I'm not sure if it's going to make it for this release of ES5 since it's kind of a separate project. But basically what that helper app is supposed to be, it's an application that's going to run native to the client box that ES will be able to utilize to do things like do monitor calibration for the HTML5 version of Dialog. It'll also be able to be utilized for things like downloading a lot of files out of ES, and instead of having to bundle them up into a zip package and then download it in one shot, it'll actually be able to pull the files directly from ES using CMIS. But it'll basically be just an application that runs on the client box itself. They didn't show it, but it just got a quick mention. That was about it. Okay. The question, I kind of covered this in the beginning, but there was a question as well about new features in Twist. They didn't talk about Twist a ton. One of the things that was mentioned was, like we talked about in the beginning, the ability to keep the relationship of files through a workflow. That'll be implemented inside of Twist. I think the category stuff's already in there. There will be a client, well, I should say an application for running the Twist editor instead of it being the Java runtime thing that has given everybody a lot of problems over the years. So it will be an installable application. You'll be able to connect. I know several of you actually have that out in the wild already because it does work with Twist 7 as well. They're going to have 3D conversion ability, so it'll be a new tool inside of Twist that will be able to take different formats of 3D files and convert them to something like Collada so that ES can understand them, or they can be used for something else, so do conversions like that. They're also adding some video conversion stuff inside of Twist as well. Some of that exists already in ES. ES does have tools for doing video conversions and the 3D conversions, but they're extending that out to the Twist side as well. Other than that, we really didn't see it getting that many features besides just tune-ups as you typically see through upgrades, especially major upgrades of the product. One thing I did forget to show real quick, and I had it running and it's killing my CPU, so I need to show it, is there's been a lot of talk about client applications or the dialogue viewer inside of the app that exists for iPads and for other devices. But by using the desktops and the HTML5 version of Dialog Engine, which when the release comes out will be fully compatible with Safari inside of an iPad or whatever browser it is on your Android device, you'll actually be able to come in here, and using the desktops, we're able to simplify these views. And actually, let me kind of get into my files here, and let me hide that so it displays a little bit better. I got a little bit large right now on this display, but we're able to use this, and I actually can launch Dialog through here, and it runs. The only thing I noticed was missing, and all the tools actually work through here. And I'm just running Xcode right now, running a simulator of the iPad. But I was able to do all my annotations that I would expect to do. The only thing that I didn't see running right now is the little palette on the right-hand side of the notes is missing. Other than that, the densitometer worked as I would expect it. Channels, layers, area coverage, all that worked, including the approvals and all of that. So, it's pretty close. It's almost there. It's the approve, rejection, revisions, the rotation. All that's in there. I thought it was pretty nice. I just kind of fired this up, and I think Moscato actually had fired it up on his iPad itself and connected to his own ES, and was pretty impressed at how easily it worked. And with the desktops, you can simplify this view so much that you can actually make it quite usable without having to deal with the whole interface of ES and trying to click small buttons. You're able to have larger buttons and larger pieces that you can use for this, and have maybe a profile that's specific to your device like that. And let's see, another question real quick, and then we'll wrap this up since we're only 5 over. Whether they're abandoning the native iOS app it seems they're headed to that direction. I'm not exactly sure. They've been kind of elusive when we have asked that, like at the Worldwide Technology meeting, but it seemed like they're headed towards making it more full-featured this way and using the tools that you build yourself to extend that out instead of the iOS app itself, especially since they have the API and someone could create their own specific app. I think they've just had a little bit of a hard time keeping up in developing for it since it's not really what their main focus is. All right. So I think that covers all our questions. If you have any other questions you think of, or if you didn't ask them, please just send those to text@blanchsys.com. We'll be happy to answer those. And I hope you found this useful. And we'll talk to you next time. Everybody have a great day. Bye.